G'day everyone, it is currently 10:45 in the morning and I am going to do another one-day make. Today I'm going to be making a face mask for my 18th century Jigglypuff, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to enter it into the Anime Expo Lights Match Your Masquerade photo competition, which is, I believe, closing next Wednesday. So probably by the time this goes up, it's already closed, it's already finished, but hopefully I've got a nice entry in. My mask is being inspired by some pictures that I saw on Instagram. The artist's name is Volker Hermes. I'll leave a link below to his Instagram account. His works show these very elaborate masks incorporated into historical paintings, and I thought that was very fitting for Jigglypuff's aesthetic. So that's what I'm going to be using as kind of my inspiration, and I will be also using all of my leftovers from the dress. So let me show you those now. So here are all of these scraps that I have left over from the competition. So it may look like a lot for a mask, but really there's not all that much here. So what I have is I've got some silk, which I'll be using as the base. I also have some of the extra trim. I have a little bit of the flower trim that I use for the middle of the bows. I've got a tiny bit of scrap left of this over material that I've been using for the other bows, which I want to try and incorporate. I can't cover the whole bows, which is really sad, but you know, we work with what we've got. And I've also got a little bit left of this chiffon. So together I'm going to make a mask, and here are some of those reference images, which I've probably already shown you, but I have a printout for my own benefit. So I want to make something super elaborate. I've got some rhinestones as well, and I also have my elastic, and I want to try and build it up into the hair, and so it's not just across the mask, kind of like what's happening on with these ones, well actually all of them, which yeah, I just thought that was a really fun idea. And I want to also create a really big bow out of the silk for the back of the hair as well. And hopefully I can get this all done today, because I would like to go and take photos of it tomorrow so that I can upload my upload the photo to the competition, and then I can edit this video all together. So let's get cracking. And welcome to the voiceover. I'll be constructing the mask base following the instructions provided by Cupcake Cosplay via the Anime Expo website. I'll link it below. I first start out by cutting out two rectangles of 8.5 by 7 inches. Then I cut out two more rectangles that were 4 by 2.5 inches. All of these pieces were cut from leftover silk, though cotton would have been better for breathing reasons, but Jigglypuff is over the top, so I thought, why not? Next, following the instructions, I pin the short edges of the big rectangles together. Then I sew. And then I turn it right side out and give it a good press with the iron. Then it's time to add some pleats. And although even at this point I knew that you probably would never see these pleats, I felt like it was very on brand for 18th century Jigglypuff. Firstly, I do a 1-inch pleat in the centre, and then sort of wing the 4 side pleats so that it looks about even and in line with the photos from the instructions. Yep, I'm a visual learner, just like Mr. Mime. Let's see how many times I can sneak in a Pokemon reference, shall we? Before sewing the pleats down, I add the top line of the long side of the small rectangle and repin. Now it's time to sew. Back at the ironing board now, I flip the mask over, iron the narrow sides of the small rectangles in, fold in the silk so it meets the edge of the mask, and then fold that over again, and pin it down. Then, as recommended by the instructions, I use the zigzag stitch to stitch down the edge. And there are your loops for the elastic, and your base mask is complete. So I've got my mask base completed here. Cupcake Cosplay's next step is to put elastic through the channels at the end here, and I'm not going to do that right now. I'm actually going to leave that as one of the very last steps, because I want to keep this as flat as possible while I decorate it. So that's going to be the next step. That's going to be the fun bit. I have a little bit of an idea of what I want to do, but we're going to see what fits. But at the moment, this is probably the fanciest plain mask ever, as it's completely made out of this Dupioni silk. But hey, it's nice, and it will go with Jigglypuff. I also forgot to mention that it's just going on midday now, so I might actually have a little play, but stop and have some lunch, and then in the afternoon I will continue. So that's the plan. So with some lunch being consumed, it was on to the part we've all been looking forward to, decorating the frogadier out of this. Starting off, I thought a nice base would be to do a 3-inch wide ruffle in the middle out of this chiffon, which I've used on Jigglypuff's underskirt, stomacher and undersleeves. I edged it all with a rolled hem. I then just did my normal trick of marking the middle and the sides and then matching it up with the centre of the mask. I made sure to leave the loops for the elastics free from any sewing and keep about 1 inch of the chiffon fabric free from the side sewing stopping points. When I was sewing it down, I made sure to spread open the mask so I wouldn't catch any of the pleats. With that complete, it is time to add the next layer. This was some of the leftover trim I used on Jigglypuff's skirt detail and in the necklace as well. I measured out how much I needed and cut it off. But the silk was fraying a bit, so I cleaned it up with some scissors and then got out my bowl of fray stopper. A neat trick I learned ages ago from Asham Cosplay was to open up the bottle and apply the fray stopper with a small brush rather than just straight from the nozzle. This reduces the risk of using too much and gives you some precision. So thank you, Asham Cosplay, your wisdom has been invaluable. And whilst I had the bottle out, I decided to give the same treatment to the brocade that I was planning on using later, as that too shed like the skin of a survivor. Next up, I sewed down the edges of the dark pink trim, and then it is all prepped to go. So sewing time it is, but this time it's by hand. As I was going along, I thought, you know what, this needs some bling. So I decided to sew in some rhinestones as I went, so that it sparkled like a shiny Pokemon. With the centre now complete, I felt that I needed to add more ruffles because I had come this far. It was either go big or go home. I cut a piece of pink ribbon that I thought would be the right length to go around the top of the mask and then up and around to the top of the back of my hair. Then remember that brocade from before? I used that and pinned it along in the same manner I did with the chiffon from before. Then to the sewing machine I went and I ran it through, gathering as I went. With this length of ruffle all completed, I went ahead and pinned it to the top of the mask and sewed, once again making sure I didn't sew over the loops for the elastics. You'll see that I pinned it right at the top of the mask. Just a heads up, I actually removed that and lowered it down in the centre so that the top of the ruffle met the top of the mask. Because I realised that having 1 inch worth of ruffle over the top of the mask meant that it cut off half of my vision, and honestly, it just looked weird. With the top ruffle now on, I still had some brocade and the ribbon, so naturally I thought, this needs a bottom ruffle. I didn't show this before, but I made sure to heat seal the ribbon edges, and then I gathered that section down too. As the bottom piece was a lot shorter than the top piece, I first sewed the gather onto the mask from its centre. Then I whip stitched the ends into the top ruffle to create a faux mask closure. Such a ditto move. Next, I wanted to make sure that the ends would be secure within my hair, so on both sides I sewed a Totodile clip. I thought it was high time that I added the elastic. The instructions from Cupcake Cosplay was to cut 12 inches of elastic. In hindsight, for me, that was a little bit too long. 10 inches probably would have been better, but hey, it still worked. Now please, watch this next clip as I fail like a Magikarp on a grass battlefield. I try inserting the elastic through the loop with a safety pin. Nothing too hard, right? I've done this plenty of times. However, I forgot to take into consideration all the layers within that channel and my safety pin got lost and then stuck. Cue sheer terror as I turned off my camera. Too late, Kiralee, we see you. I try again, but this time in the smart way, with a loop turner. Guys, if you haven't got one of these devices yet, get one. They are cheap and you'll hardly use them, but when you need them, they'll save you so much heartache. Did you really think we were done? Ha! No, never. There was still one more thing I wanted to add to this totally over-the-top already mask. Bows. Or rather, I realised that I could maybe make one bow that would mimic the ones I already had on my dress with this tiny scrap of decorative fabric. So I started by marking and cutting out a matching sized rectangle of silk. Then I laid the scrap over the silk, pinned and sewed the layers best as I could.
Then I sewed it into a long loop and realised that rather than having one bow that might actually look a little bit too long for the mask, I could cut it into two and have two tiny bows. So I plaited down the centres of these little bows and my heart exploded a little. They were so cute! I got excited. Next, from some scrap silk, I made little tubes that I could mount some of the flower trim onto. This really helped match it to the other bows on the dress. Then I wrapped that around the bow's centre and sewed it down. These bows were then sewed into the front of the mask to finish off the look.
G'day everyone, it is Sunday evening here, so I well and truly got the mask done and dusted on Sunday. It took a little bit longer than I anticipated, but then there was a lot of ruffles on that, and I absolutely adore the little bows, but they took a little while to complete. I even managed to get this wonderful hair bow done as well, using the rest of the scraps and a bit more silk, and they actually double up as some cute little ears. Happy accident. I had always planned to do a big bow on the back. I just needed to figure out how I could incorporate it, but I really like this. In terms of the mask itself, this is the monstrosity, and it is so ridiculous and so heinous that I love it. It's kind of like a love-hate kind of situation. It's so over the top and so unnecessary, and I think that's why I love it, because that's quite in line with the costume itself. I plan on now ripping this to pieces and using like the bows for the sleeves, and I want to put proper fixtures into the front of the bodice, and I might even use some of these ruffles for some additional hair pieces. So that's going to happen next, but today what I did was that I got my hair up, did my makeup, got a little gemstone on my face, and Terry took some photos of me at the local park. So I will put that now. In short, I really love and hate this mask. It is so over the top. It is so dramatic, which is why I love it. But in the same token, you know, it does kind of look like I've got frilly underwear on my face. My friend described it as if Mad Max was designed by a Disney princess who was 5 years old. I'm not even mad about that. That's a fantastic description of this. So now it's time to grab the seam ripper and pull this thing apart. But I have entered the competition and I am happy with how it all turned out. It was just a whole lot of fun and a lot of laughing at myself all along the way, which, you know what, that's the best way to have it. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye!
And just before we finish up, I'd like to give out a massive shout out to all my beautiful patrons, especially those on the $10 a month tier, who are Justine Ghostly, Carolyn Drychio, Return of the T-Shack, and Rogue Threads. Thank you all so much for your support. And if you too would like to support this channel and my creations, please consider becoming a patron today by clicking the link in the description.